What up, guys? Welcome to episode 11 of the Get Strong series. And you may think, am I here to get my kidneys removed? No, I'm getting my neck worked on because for, I would say probably the last couple of months, I've been dealing with my rhomboid. If you guys watch JK News, rhomboid, trap, and some other, what are some other fancy names that go back here?
So you have your levator scap, which kind of pulls your scapula up, and then all of your paraspinals that we've been working on quite a bit.
Yep, I got a lot of that stuff that I've been dealing with. I don't know if it's my age in lifting, or just plain sleeping stupidly, because I love sleeping with my hand underneath the cold pillow and it feels really good. And then I knock out, and in the morning I wake up and I'm like, ah, shit, stuck, I can't move. And then now, if I go overhead press or if I go bench, now my shoulder hurts, I can't even get in proper position. So I wanted to share with you guys like some of the protocols that I do. There's a lot of times where you have to treat the issue in a very targeted way, which is why I have Dr. Brooke Kleven here to show you some of the stuff that she does. And one of my favorite is dry needling. I feel like it literally takes like 10 years of aging off of my muscles. So yeah, I've been dealing with the same issues. Just like stiff neck still. And then I still feel like there's that special part that you get in the middle.
That one trigger point spot right there.
It always pops up. I don't know what it is.
Right in there.
Yeah.
Does it change when you go overhead, or is it still just kind of that dull constant?
I've been staying a little bit away from overhead presses, just because I realize if I sleep dumb, then it comes back real fast. I can feel it during warm-ups.
Okay.
But when I'm doing behind the neck overhead presses, it doesn't really bug me, so I've just kind of just swapped it out with that for now.
So you can do behind the neck fine, but as soon as you get into like a front rack position is when you feel it, or?
I think it's usually when it's like here, and then when I have to like internally rotate, I'll go, oh snaps, I feel like I'm like just a few reps away from like getting my like neck locked up.
Locked up, or do you feel it like sense of instability through there?
Everything.
All the above? Okay, sit up tall for me as far as you can to the right.
By the way, this is actually really good considering all the work she's done on me.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you were at probably, chin was barely past chest before.
I was like this before.
Yeah. Look to the ceiling. Yeah, that's much better. Chin to chest.
So I don't have that thing that pulls anymore.
So when you do that, you're not feeling that radiating?
Yeah. So I had this really, this issue that I was dealing with. What would you call that point?
So a lot of what he's experiencing is he starts getting referral pain whenever he starts going into like neck extension. And the reason why is because right at C5, C6, you start having referral pain kind of out to the shoulder, down to the scap area. So anytime he was going into neck flexion, that was putting a lot of tension through the spinal cord, which was causing the referral patterns to like that C5, C6 radiating. So once we relieved a lot of that, it's called, in fancy words, cervical radiculopathy. So
it's ridiculous.
Once we, exactly. So once we got a lot of that to kind of centralize, which means we're essentially improving the situation, he's no longer having that neural tension radiating out when he goes into neck flexion. So now we just need to work on a lot of the strength and stabilization when he gets into more of the activity prone movements, especially overhead pressing. Elbows out for me, hold. Good.
And what are these tests for?
So these are tests to check they're called myotomes. So essentially where the nerve root is creating the muscle strength. So hold bicep, don't let me push. So when you have injury to a nerve root, you can have pain, which usually people get the most concerned about pain. Make a fist for me, don't let me bend it. Or you can have weakness, or you can have numbness. And so pain is actually the least severe of injury to a nerve root. Then you start having like the muscle loss and the like paresthesias, like numbness, tingling. Those are actually more severe than pain. So a lot of times people won't even realize that they've been numb in an area, and then they're like, oh, you saw me and now there's pain there. There wasn't pain before. And I was like, before you couldn't even feel it. Now we're actually getting that nerve to fire.
I see.
So sometimes pain is a less severe case, but it's not usually what we think of. Do like a tricep extension for me. Good. Go ahead. Good. Squeeze my fingers. Good. Thumbs up. Don't let me push. Good. Spread. Don't let me squeeze them. Good. And just relax.
What's cool is Brooke lifts too, so she knows. She knows that you can't just say, "Oh, just lay off of it for 3 weeks."
That was one of my biggest pet peeves when I was an athlete, when a doctor would tell me, "Oh, just don't do that again and you'll be fine." Because when you're an athlete, that's not a realistic answer a lot of times. Like,
It's like, yeah, parenting gives me headaches. I won't be a parent for 3 weeks. Sure.
just take off parenting and then everything will be okay. All right, so let's have you lay on your stomach for me. So what we're going to do based on kind of that quick assessment or reassessment, because we've assessed him before, he's actually doing really well in the C5, C6 area. C7 through like triceps, he's having a little bit of weakness. So what we're going to do is needle right at kind of at his C7 paraspinals. So you go to the level of the spine, and then there's muscles that run right along the spine on both sides, and that helps with stabilization in that area. So we're going to needle that, and then we're going to kind of start going into some of the shoulder stabilizers to see when he's doing overhead pressing, if we can help that stabilization and he's not feeling the pain and instability. Doing okay?
Yep.
Dry needling is a really cool technique to use in addition to a lot of modalities, kind of like what Bart was explaining, because a lot of times as athletes we'll talk about like getting a trigger point somewhere and having some pain, and we'll get a massage or something and it might feel better for a day or two, but it never actually goes away. And the problem is deep tissue, so whether it's a massage or like Graston, cupping, any type of like tissue work, even foam rolling, it'll help release it, but a lot of times that trigger point won't release fully, so you'll get temporary relief, but it doesn't actually make it go away. Dry needling, on the other hand, research has shown that when you stick a needle mechanically into a trigger point, it mechanically releases that trigger point, so it changes it not only from a mechanical standpoint, but also from a chemical standpoint, because when it releases it, it releases all of like the inflammatory response molecules as well.
Ooh,
yeah.
That was a good one right there.
Yeah, that one was twitchy.
Yeah, so what I like about dry needling, kind of like what she's saying, but from the receiving end, even if you get a massage or you get like either a physical therapy or a chiropractor, or if you just smash something, it doesn't feel like it fully gets released. But the minute the needle goes in to the trigger point, it feels like it hits the bullseye and you're like, oh, that's exactly what the problem is, down to like the tip of a pen. So once she's done with like the whole like electric stim stuff, like my entire area feels like the whole area fully recovered, and it almost feels like you don't need another session. Whereas when it's like more manual manipulation with the hands, sometimes it feels like, oh, I gotta go back like 4 times, like it's only halfway there.
Are you feeling it on the right at all?
I feel it on the left.
Yeah, the left is firing really well.
The right's not firing?
No, it's fighting me.
What does that mean?
So what it means when one side's firing and not another is, for whatever reason, the connection from the brain down to the muscle is lacking a good communication. So it's kind of like the outlet cord is pulled out. So by sequencing between high and low frequency like we are, it kind of does, for lack of better words, the same thing as like when somebody uses a defibrillator to get the heart firing again. We're trying to get the muscles firing again. So we're resetting that communication between the two. And it's really interesting, depending on how the tissue is firing. Sometimes if the tissue is responding really how we want it to, it will feel more like a deep, twitchy, almost like a deep toothache pain. But places like on this right side where we're not getting as good of a connection, it might feel more staticky or electric because you're not getting that full circuit through the tissue. So it's very helpful to also hear how it's feeling from the patient end, because that will tell us kind of what's going on internally. How's the shoulder? Is it too much?
With the rear delt?
Yeah.
It's a little bit strong, but
Okay.
if there's just only a couple more, it's fine.
So pretty much all the nerves from your lower cervical area, they come together to make a bundle of nerves like in your shoulder, and then those all come out. So you have like the three main nerves are your radial nerve, your musculocutaneous, and then your ulnar nerve. And so those three, with some others, innervate most of the muscles on your arm.
I see.
Oh,
What happened?
I'm gonna show you. So,
Whoa, what the?
you know how Bart was saying at the beginning, sometimes you stick the needle in and immediately he could feel it release. So when the muscle has a pretty intense twitch response from that initial insertion, it can actually bend the needle like that. So even a tiny muscle like the paraspinals up here in the neck can have pretty intense responses.
So it bent it?
Yeah, check this
see.
out.
Whoa, that's crazy.
That was the one from your neck.
Whoa, it was bent after the twitching, or when you put it in, it
The
was
twitch response causes that.
wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
So if you're not used to dry needling, people tend to be a little more sore. After a session or two, the soreness is pretty mild, but the soreness even after it is more like you just did a hard workout. So it'll be more like a dull muscle achy rather than, it shouldn't be increased severity of like the pain of the injury. It's more just, especially like through the neck and shoulder area, you just feel like you did like a intense workout that day. The nice thing with dry needling is you actually want athletes to work out in decent proximity to when you needle, because you're getting that muscle and everything to fire correctly. So then by working out after, you're utilizing it. You obviously don't want to be trying to do like max lifts or anything like super intense, but getting in and just getting like maybe a little bit higher volume, lower intensity is really helpful.
That was
A little more painful.
Yeah, a little bit painful.
So I won't always do that, what I just did. So that's called like more pistoning, where you're actually moving the needle around in the tissue. Bart has just some pretty intense traps. So sometimes we want to piston around in the tissue just to kind of get some of those trigger points. That pistoning though is what tends to make people a little more sore. So especially with somebody who I know has a lower tolerance or has more of a tendency to have more pain from treatment, I wouldn't do something like that. But with Bart, if we can get that trapped really release, it always helps with a lot of his symptoms.
Oh, yeah. You felt something?
Ooh. Yeah, that guy was fighting me at first. It was a little tight in there.
Yeah, I didn't even know I had something wrong on that side.
How's that feel?
Like a party?
Any pain?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna let it sit there for a little bit, as long as you're okay.
Yeah. Could you stick 2 needles in someone's booty and make them twerk?
Yep.
That's funny.
Okay, shrug up again for me. Good. Elbows out. Hold. Good. Bicep. Hold. Good. Push away. Good. Push away. It's better. Good. Relax. Go ahead and move around, like neck range of motion. That looks good. Overhead press for me. Feeling any different?
It feels a little bit looser in the trap area.
Okay. Are you feeling kind of this area still?
Let's see. A little bit, like a little bit in here. Did you stab this area?
No, I haven't done that localized spot that you like to do yet.
Yeah. I feel like that's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I know that's always your favorite spot.
Yep.
Okay, let's have you lay on your stomach again. We'll kind of go through that spot and then see where we're at after that. Depending on which muscle you're going into, it'll change the depth. So there's different length needles, because obviously muscles in this area are going to be closer to the surface versus like when you were asking about the glutes. The glutes are a lot bigger of a muscle, so you're going to need a longer needle. And it's funny because people sometimes look at the length of the needle and kind of freak out like, oh, you're not putting that big of a needle in me, are you? But the majority of our sensory receptors, so what we can feel, is on our skin. Once you go into the tissue, whether you're a millimeter in or 4 inches in, it really doesn't feel a whole lot different. Like a lot of times people won't even know how deep it was in. They're like, oh, I thought you were just right at the surface of my skin. And then they saw afterwards and they were like, whoa. So see how much more it's twitching. So I didn't change the intensity at all, but all I was doing was going up into a higher frequency. And when you go into a frequency above what the brain naturally sends down to the muscle, it's kind of acting like a reset button, and it'll start changing that rhythmic contraction from the brain down to the muscle. So essentially from more of a physiology standpoint, you're recruiting more of the motor units kind of. So skeletal muscle is one of the few, well, one of the only tissues in the body that has more than one nucleus per cell. So a muscle fiber may have, for lack of better words, 100 nuclei throughout that whole fiber. And so sometimes after injury or just something causing irritation to that muscle, maybe 50 of the 100 motor units or nuclei are no longer having good communication between the muscle and the nerve. And so what happens is it might not be contracting the way it needs to. And when we talk about motor problems versus structural problems in a tissue, that's what we're talking about when we say motor, is that communication between the nerve and the muscle. There's not a structural injury. It's not like something's torn. It's not that there's something physically wrong, but physiologically how it's working, there's something messed up in there. And that's more of the motor issue. So that's kind of the difference between the motor versus structural. How far out are you? Don't you? A couple weeks, right?
5 weeks out this week. So it's getting pretty close.
That's crazy. Can't believe it's already almost here.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good.
We got that spot.
Yeah, I felt it.
You're like, yes, thank you. I'm aware.
Yeah. Did you see it like behave a certain way?
Yeah, I got a twitch response in it.
Ooh.
Yeah, you can almost feel, like from my end, you'll feel kind of some tension building in the tissue. So it almost feels like, for lack of better words, it feels like it's getting locked up on you a little bit. And then all of a sudden it'll be just a big twitch and you can feel like the tissue almost release under your fingers. What do you feel?
Feels good because I always know it feels good because this side loosens up.
And then you feel more tension
and then
on the
this side
left.
feels, the healthy side now feels tighter. So I'm like, okay, that's cool.
You're getting a lot more rounding through here. So before, I should have had you guys look from the back, but before when he would go into neck flexion, it wasn't too bad today, but like when we first started before, it would just be a complete hinge. So his neck would flex forward and there would be zero rounding and then it would just hinge right at that spot. But now when he goes into neck flexion, you can actually see a nice arc through that area. He's still a little tight up in this higher cervical area, but you can see a great arc through here. So that shows that the tissue is actually allowing his spine to do the movement it's supposed to.
Yeah, a couple months ago it was like this, but then now it's like you could see it kind of go like bending. There's all these little bones in there. We're good until we'll see what happens when I need the next one. Until the next time I sleep stupid like this. I always have to like I'll get comfortable. No, don't you dare. And I try to like sleep with my hands down.
It's hard.
Yeah, cause I have like or I'll go like, oh, maybe this side. Like, no, hands down. I try to sleep like that. Or else I get like my whole area gets all jammed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously we can't control what we do when we sleep, but that's why it's so important just to make sure throughout the day you're doing your mobility on top of stuff just because you're going to get tight.
Yeah.
Whether it's sitting for a few hours working or sleeping, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a typical dry needling session. I go based off of like symptom basis where if it's bugging me and it's affecting one of my lifts or I can feel that I'm not getting the activation that I need, then I will get it done. And then what I like about dry needling specifically is it feels like it compresses like 2 weeks worth of therapy into one. And then afterwards, something that I'm really diligent about is doing all the like mobility and like the prehab work. Because what it feels like is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you get your muscles waking up, the ones that are all tight, they're loosened. But now if you just go back to your regular daily life, then you're gonna head towards the direction of what caused it to begin with. It's like sleeping stupid or doing whatever. So for me, after I get this done and my body's like reset, now it's really important for me to stay up with all the exercises to strengthen either the muscles that have been sleeping the whole time, to wake them back up, or to create better patterns between my brain and my muscles so that I don't go down that same direction. Is that correct?
Yep, that's a great summary.
So yeah, that's what I do. And as you guys are all trying to lift and pursue your lifting career and your fitness journey, a lot of times it's easy to get carried away in the training because that's the fun part. Everyone loves to train, but recovery is just as important. So make sure you make that a priority, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.